Well, it's another busy day here in North Carolina. And of course, we've got all kinds of interesting things that are happening in the world and around the world and all of that. I saw that there's definitely been some talk about different things that are going on the political front. And actually, I believe that I just heard that in North Carolina, the COVID cases are actually on a decrease. So hopefully they will continue that way. And that would be great news here in North Carolina. But we do know that sometimes things go up and down as we struggle with this pandemic and all of that. And of course, we do have a new administration, and they're already doing a great amount of things in their first few days in office. I know that the mask mandate is out there, and there are a number of other things that are out there as well. As a matter of fact, I was just hearing earlier today that President Biden will sign a fresh round of executive orders during his first full week in office, including actions loosening restrictions around abortion and immigration. Biden will issue an order to rescind the Mexico City policy, which prohibits U.S. funding for foreign organizations that perform or promote abortions. The administration also dodged last week on whether Biden plans to scrap the Hyde Amendment, which bars taxpayer funding for executive abortions under Medicaid. But I know a lot of folks are definitely excited about this $15 minimum wage thing that is going in place that affects federal employees and I think some other kinds of employees as well. And I know a lot of folks are hoping that it will impact them also. And of course, folks are waiting to see what's going to happen with any new stimulus package and things along that line, since a lot of us are still struggling with our own finances and trying to find ways to make money that we can and all of that in order to survive during these very difficult times where there's a lot going on, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's things around race relations, whether it's around a number of other issues that are going on as well. And we know that one industry that has definitely been impacted quite heavily by a lot of things that are going on is the film industry. And I'm very glad to have Amanda joining me. Amanda is with a film that I learned about through an organization that I am part of, that being the Carolina Theater. So they're going to be at the Nevermore Film Festival, and they will be one of the films shown virtually and all of that. So I'm interested in learning all about Amanda, and I've got my good friend Cara with us as well, and some others may be joining us also. But I'm going to bring Amanda on very shortly and learn more about how she got involved in the film industry, how she's surviving during these difficult times, and a lot more things that are going on in that regard. So definitely I'm going to bring Amanda on first, and she's got the Wandering Dragon thing going on with her also. And I've also seen that I've got a hip hop artist that'll be joining in our conversation as well, because we always have great conversations with a number of folks that are always here with us and all of that. So Amanda, like I said, I'm going to play some of the clips at some point of some of the films that you've been involved in, including the one you sent me for The Stare. And like I said, it looks like it's going to be an exciting film and everything, but I'm sure that folks would like to learn, how did you even get involved in the film industry as a producer? And I saw that you're involved in the corporate business world and a number of other things as well. So I'm sure folks would like to learn how you got involved in the film industry and also how the film industry is coping, because we do know a lot of festivals, and it seems to me that's what y'all were depending on a lot, where have now gone virtual and aren't as many in-person ones as you would have probably liked, because I know a lot of times the producers, the actors, the directors all like to have that hands-on kind of experience, but it doesn't seem like y'all are having as much of that, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But definitely share a little bit about your getting introduced into the filmmaking world and your becoming a producer.
Sure. I have a business background, but I've always loved movies. I should start at the beginning. When I was teeny tiny, we would take what we would call movie vacations, where you pulled the phone off the wall, you parked your cars around the corner, and you made pillow forts. And for an entire weekend, we would just watch stacks and stacks of VHS tapes. So I've always loved the film industry, and I loved being able to kind of escape, your real world. Right. I joined, I entered the business and finance industries and met a bunch of people that were in entertainment, including my business partner, Peter Drago Tiemann. And he wanted to create a production company. And because I have a business and finance background, we partnered and we created Wandering Dragon Productions. And he's been in the industry for 20 plus years. He's been a stunt coordinator, stunt performer, and that's sort of how I got how I got roped into being in the industry, and I love it. I love meeting all the people. I love being able to bring a business and finance background into an industry where you get to work with a ton of creative people and make kind of dreams happen and impact people sitting at home having their own movie vacations.
And I definitely remember the movies. Actually, I grew up in a little small town called Warrenton. Actually, my parents decided to start a radio station when I was very young. They had no actual radio background. They actually were, mom was a guidance counselor and had that education background. Dad
Yeah.
had actually been trained in engineering and other fields. He had actually done some military service, and he had also been involved in the civil rights struggle. But they were frustrated by the lack of jazz music in that community and a lack of other things that they wanted to hear, including wanting to hear some of the news of the day, but from their perspective and all of that.
Right.
So they were definitely wanting to create a radio station. They started it in the late 70s when I was a preteen, and it stayed on for about 10 or 12 years, but it actually helped them develop and continue their careers. Dad is still a well-known artist here in this area of North Carolina, and mom is a retired person that was working in the field of philanthropy and all of that. So definitely was very much involved in a number of things, kind of affiliated with some of the things you do, because philanthropy
Yeah.
oftentimes is tied into the financing world as well. But I do
Yes,
remember
it
growing up in Warrenton, there was a little small movie theater, and it was a movie theater that showed at that time, and this was like the late 70s and early 80s,
Mhm.
a lot of the Bruce Lee kind of movies, a lot
Yep.
of the spaghetti westerns and the kind
Yep.
of things of that nature. 'Cause like I said, it was in a small rural town, and it was
Mhm.
in a small building and everything. But I do remember going to see some of those early movies in that kind of environment, and they really enjoying movies and all of that. So
Yeah.
one of the things I would be curious about is if somebody was thinking that they even wanted to get involved in production and in financing of films. A lot of times folks are like thinking that that's something that is outside of their realm of possibility. And a lot of times I know that oftentimes filmmakers will do the friends and family kind of plan of trying to find financing. I know that Robert Townsend definitely talked about that with Hollywood Shuffle way back when, and a number of other filmmakers have talked about that. So what is your advice for those that think that they even want to get into the film industry on the finance side?
On the finance side, I mean, I would say do anything you can to get on a set or get involved in a production, even if you're volunteering and you're going and picking up coffee. Being available and being able to be like, hey, I'm here to help you, even if it's filing papers or scanning. Being open and available for those moments. Somebody like me is going to be like, hey, do you have a second? Let me teach you how to do this thing. And so I would say that's the biggest key. If you want to get in the entertainment industry, if you want to get into production, just look. It's happening everywhere in every city across the United States. Productions are happening. So just get on Facebook or get on go onto like a chat forum and find out from what's happening, contact people, email people. I'm in Seattle, so there's a big community here, and it's really nice because there's a big community of like, hey, there's a production happening. Can I help? What can I do? And so it's that's what my biggest advice. You want to do it? Don't let anybody tell you no, and get out there and do it for sure.
And one of the other things that I know that one of our founders has talked about, Kim
Mhm.
Calhoun here with the International Broadcast Media, has been talking about the new ways of distribution. We're seeing that because of what's going on with the pandemic and things of that nature. So I
Yeah.
was wondering your thoughts on that as well, because I do know that there's been talk about how a lot of our bigger movies aren't even going to necessarily go to the big movie houses. They're thinking
Right.
about doing like straight to streaming, or they're joining different
Mhm.
kinds of platforms and things of that nature. So as one that is involved in the indie film community, I was wondering your thoughts about this movement, and do you think we will continue to have traditional movie houses and things of that nature, or you think there's going to be more of a hybrid model that I'm hearing a lot of people thinking is going to be the direction of the future?
Well, I think I have a few thoughts. One, I think that, as an industry, we really need those tentpole films, the big Marvel films, the big Mission Impossible films. Like, even as an indie producer, I think that those big tentpole films really pull in audiences that we can like, oh, you liked Mission Impossible, you might like this other thing from an indie producer that's on streaming. So I think that, all those things go hand in hand. I do believe that at some point we're going to have to look at a hybrid release, even for those big tentpole movies like, Marvel and Mission Impossible. But I also think that it gives a huge opportunity for us as indie filmmakers. And when I say indie filmmakers, that means we're not financed by a studio. Paramount doesn't come in and write us a check, right? We go out and we fund our own productions, whether it's self-funding or finding other people to help us. But I think that, right now is our opportunity. I think what we're seeing is, especially with COVID, you're seeing people get really creative, and not just in the writing of the screenplays, but even in the shooting. Right. So, I think it's helpful for us to think about and continue moving the industry forward, so it doesn't get so stagnant. Every business needs to move forward. Every type of business needs to have new invention and a new way of doing things to keep it fresh. And I think it's time, right? And we're seeing with the streaming platforms, we're kind of seeing the cable wars of the 80s, if you remember.
Yes.
Right. So there's always a few kinks to work out, but I think that this moment is big for us as indie filmmakers and indie producers and indie film in general. COVID has made everybody stay at home, so everybody's looking for content. And I know other producers that have had things sitting on the shelves that they never got distribution for, that are pulling it off and being like, hey, now's my moment. Pulling it off of the shelf, maybe adding, a few things, and then putting it out in distribution again. So it's exciting, I think.
It sounds like it's very exciting. And by the way, I see that Nancy Fry has been making some comments and everything. So they were saying that they can't agree more about getting into the biz by working on the set. And definitely even in the production office, learn by doing, watching, and helping. So they were definitely making that comment and everything. So definitely would agree with them on that. I did want to bring in two of our other guests and everything, but before we get into the conversation even more, I did want them to see a little bit of your early work. I will get to the stare and everything, but I did want them to see and learn about Alone We Fight, because this is more of a war kind of like film and everything. And it definitely would celebrate. Yes, and that's what I would like to know, because you had a trailer that you sent me about this. So tell me how you got involved with this and a little bit about what it is all about. And I know it was celebrating even a historical day and all of that. So I'm going to play that and everything, and folks will get a chance to check that out. And then we'll bring in our other guest, who is, like I said, we've got a hip hop artist as well as somebody that's in the wellness field as well. But definitely share a little bit about Alone We Fight, and what you want to share about this particular first film that you did and how you got into this first involvement.
Sure. So this was the first film that I produced with our production company, and the director of the film actually came to us and asked us to finance it and, option it and make it. And we did. So it was, I think we shot for 15 days or 16 days. We shot it in Oregon. Corbin Burnson's in it. Johnny Mesner's in it. Aiden Bristow is in it. And Matthew McCarthy is in it. And it was an exciting, interesting, amazing experience with lots of explosions and fire and tanks and a lot of guns. So yeah, we shot this in April, and we released on Armistice Day in November for the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day.
Wow. Well, let's check out this and everything. So I'm going to bring it up as a clip and everything, and let folks check out a little bit of this particular clip of what y'all had for Alone We Fight.
This little light of mine. Germans are killing 50 of our good men for every one tree that we take. They're about to make a push right through this flank.
We're outnumbered, outmanned. This flank is falling apart. Now look around you.
It would be okay, you know.
What's that?
Are you afraid?
You got time to be scared.
We all are.
We need to pull back immediately.
We only got a few Rangers left, but I'm thinking maybe we can contribute a bit more given the current situation.
How many men you got left, sir?
I got 3 Rangers, Colonel. More than enough to get the job done.
Wow. Like I said, wow, that's a really intense and everything of that nature. So definitely very intense. What do you tell folks that are interested in doing films like that and they're afraid that they can't get those kind of elements? Like I said, y'all are an independent film house, but I know some other independent filmmakers that would love to be able to have a tank or a number of those other big items, but they are feeling like they don't have the wherewithal to get those kind of things and everything. So when folks see like this kind of high intensity independent film and they're like, I really want to do that, but I don't know that I could actually pull that off, what is your words of advice or your words of ways that they can get that done? And were there any surprises of things that you were able to pull off that you were even surprised that you were able to do?
So I would say, don't be afraid of the word no. You're going to make 1,000 phone calls. You're probably getting 999 no's, but you want that one yes. We actually tapped into a huge local group of reenactors that brought uniforms and guns and tanks, and it was one of those 1,000 phone calls that you make trying to get something done. And it was great. We had reenactors in the film. We had all their equipment in a film. So if you know what you're going to do, and if it's a period piece, right, like Civil War piece or whatever, having reenactors or having people who actually know what they're doing on set is super great. And sometimes they'll do it for free. Sometimes they'll do it for a donation to their, group. Sometimes, the rates are reasonable for an indie filmmaker. So that's my advice.
Sounds like some great advice and everything along those lines. Now, I do know that one of the other things that sometimes producers need is, of course, good music. And of course, they also need some people that are going to help them on the nutrition side. So I'll bring Cara up first, and then I'll bring in Raman as well. So Cara is definitely involved in the health nutrition and all of that, and has been a health coach and all of that. So you saw that powerful piece, and I don't know whether you've ever even attempted there in Cincinnati to get involved in the film industry, Cara, but if so, have you ever thought that you might try to add to that aspect of it? Because I do know that it definitely on the sets, they have people that have to do the whole nutrition thing and sometimes try to help with the nutrition. So I'm sure that definitely our guest, Amanda, may have some thoughts about that, because I know a lot of even the big productions will have whole food elements of what they're doing.
I mean, that's a cool avenue. There definitely is there are some companies here in Cincinnati, agencies and production companies. I know people who have like small parts in films, and we have theaters here in Cincinnati, and even Cincinnati's had parts in big films. So, kind of neat, but I've never really thought about getting into that because, when I think of movies, I do think of like just the roles, and I'm like, I don't even think I could be an extra. I would just like have a panic attack. So I don't even know about that. I can't even memorize my podcast lines. Like, how can I even memorize a real line or like
Definitely.
take directions? So, but that would be kind of cool to like, help people with their nutrition on sets.
Food on set is a huge thing. And, you have to feed an army for a month or however long you're shooting. And there's definitely, everybody has their own kind of nutritional needs. So being able to have somebody, I mean, that would be a huge help for us.
I guess I never really thought of that,
No.
Yeah, people eat, but
Yeah.
very.
Amanda, what are some of the other roles that people may not think about? Because have had the privilege of being on a couple of movie sets here in North Carolina. Like, of course, I remember when Bull Durham was shot many years ago, and there have been some other movies even more recently here in the Carolinas. It's definitely had a reputation there for a while as one of the movie hotspots, and still got some movies and TV shows shot here, even though there have been some of the tax credits that were taken away from us and things of that nature. So we kind of slid down in terms of popularity. I think at one point we might have been like either 3 or 4, and we might be like 6 or 7 because of places like Georgia and other places taking away from us and everything. So I need to get our governor to get back on the case of what he needs to do so we can climb back up. But what are some of the other jobs that folks may not be aware of on a movie set that they might even be thinking that they might want to be involved in?
Sure. So, I mean, food is a huge issue. You have anywhere from 100 to 300 people coming through your set in a month. You're providing 2, maybe 3 meals, plus snacks a day. So food is definitely up there. Transportation is another big piece of it. You have to move all the people. You have to move trailers. You have to move equipment. You have to there's just so much stuff that needs to move from location to location, or even from what we call base camp to on set. So if you're into, moving stuff or driving people, that's also like a big help. And then production assistance, which could be anything from helping put, the snack table together, to holding a light, to, clapping the slate, to helping with paperwork, to making phone calls and reservations. Anybody with any skill at all, or even, can take direction from somebody else, always needed on a movie.
Sounds like they're always needed. And I do want to bring in, because we know another thing that is always needed is good music. And that's where Rahman Jamal comes in and everything. He is a hip hop artist and all of that, and also an educator. So definitely glad that you were able to join us on this conversation. And also definitely, have you been involved at all in any movies where you are? Because I know that you're out there, if I remember correctly, out in the West Coast as well. So share a little bit about your own movie experiences. We've got Amanda here, and she's part of the team for Wandering Dragons, and they've actually got a film called The Stair that'll be showing as part of Nevermore. And in a little bit, I'm going to learn how they found out about the Nevermore Film Festival and a little bit about how they got involved with that. But definitely share a little bit about your own film background if you've had any.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. That's film is actually how I got started in my music career in the entertainment industry. I had a rare opportunity to star in a film that was about a hip hop artist, and I got to write all the music that the hip hop artist performed. And that film was called The Beat. It went to Sundance in 2003. We were the youngest filmmakers to have a feature film accepted that year. We set the record at, I think the writer-director, Brandon Saunier, was 20 years old at the time. So and then he's since then he's gone on to write for The Blacklist. He's now the showrunner for LA's Finest. So definitely for me, having a full scholarship to study film at USC was a major opportunity, and we made the most of it. It actually catalyzed the path that I'm on now, which is, kind of after starring in your own movie, it's kind of like, okay, what next? Do I continue to try to, keep the star status and everything that goes with that, or do I use that as sort of a launching point for some more, I guess, to say deeper change in society. That I've always believed that the entertainment industry is one of the most powerful mediums for change and learning, actually. And so, I kind of chose my path to try to merge those worlds and merge, social justice, activism, and organizing, and using my role as an artist, as a film maker, and to inspire our next generation and say, hey, you guys can do this too. Like we're all capable of creating the media of the future, especially now more and more. It's becoming a lot more of us are becoming media makers, but not all of us are understanding sort of the impact that can have. You got a lot of social media, content makers and all this and that, which is great, but there's also some deeper purpose to putting together media and doing it for longevity and really trying to make a difference in society and help us evolve to the next level of self-understanding and things like that. And so that's what I put into my music. That's what I put into all my work. Like anything that I create to be consumed is going to have both entertainment and educational ramifications, I guess you could say.
And it makes a lot of sense. And actually, that one of the questions I was going to ask you and everything, but I'm curious to hear also from Amanda about this is, and we've talked about this before when you appeared on one of the other shows and everything, is too often I feel that everybody knows the concept and they hear the term show business, and a lot of folks are very good on the show aspect. They're masters at the show aspect. I don't know that they're always that great on the business aspects. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that when you see people that are more involved in knowing the talent side, but maybe they don't have the business acumen. So do you try to let them know that you can help on that side, Amanda? And then I'll come back to Rahman and hear whether he's actually been, what his own kind of like thoughts have been and involvements have been with folks that are like on your side of being producers and all of that. But first, I'd like to hear from you, Amanda, in terms of like how you might have to get people to understand that it is a business. I mean, it is a business that we're in, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's even your local theater. But sometimes folks are so concentrated on the talent aspect, and that is an important aspect. But if you can't put butts in the seat, it doesn't really help you all that much.
Right. I always say, the movie industry or the film business is where creativity and business planning meet. And at that moment of meeting, it opens new doors and new possibilities. So you can have all the creativity and all the ideas and all the, intention that you want, but until you have some sort of movement or financial backing or being able to really fund that process and to get that out there, your impact is going to be only so big, right? It's the ripples in a pond effect. But, the bigger that you can create and the more that you can plan out, and, lightning strikes for sure. But I think everybody here would agree that, the more successful, the more planning you put into what you're going to do, the more successful odds are it will be, right? And I think the film industry, being able to work outside the box in the creativity aspect of it and live within, the guardrails of finance and business, it's that magic in a bottle, right? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Rahman, what about yourself? What kind of dealings have you had with people like Amanda that have been on the producer side or trying to help you in the financing of what you're doing? Like I said, she's definitely financing a couple of films. We've actually showed one from earlier, which was kind of that war-oriented film, and I've got two more that I'll put on during the course of this conversation and everything. But what has been your own role in terms of trying to go after those finance people, and what kind of pitches do you try to give to them, and how successful do you feel you've been?
Well, man, it feels like a loaded question. One, nice to meet you, Amanda.
Nice to meet you.
And it's interesting because I feel like it would be easier if I was a filmmaker who was, just purely trying to, entertain and, just display my talents, if you will. It gets a little trickier when you are involved in social justice movements because it is important that everybody on your team is there for the right reasons and understands why you're doing the work that you're doing. And I hate to say it, but like, the film industry is actually responsible for a lot of damage and uh, 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 erasing of culture, especially when it comes to hip hop. And this is why it's really interesting to talk about this now, because I can give a real world example. And this isn't to say that all filmmakers or all producers are like this, but since you asked the question, it needs to be said. So there's there's a film about hip hop dance that mostly everybody knows, called Breakin'. And this was a film that inspired like an entire generation of dancers to start doing what's called popping now. And it was inspired by the cultural movement that came out of New York, called hip hop. Had breakdancing and everything like that. So they made a Hollywood film about the breakdancers in New York. And then they made a sequel called Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, which was supposed to talk about the dance culture that was on the West Coast during this same time. But because it was a sequel, because the producer of that they were kind of going for the sort of the allure of street dance, they made shortcuts. They took shortcuts, and they basically were like, okay, well, it was kind of like, who are the dancers we can find that, it's almost like holding a talent audition, except you're making a film about an entire culture of people, and you're handpicking the dancers that you like, which may or may not be the proper representatives of the whole culture. And so you have this blending of celebrity and real street culture. And when that isn't approached with a certain degree of respect, then it can create problems. And even today we have this huge gap in understanding about West Coast dance history, because it only goes as far as Los Angeles's dance history. And the work that I'm doing now with the gentleman by the name of Lonnie Green has been his life's work, because he was part of the original cultures out of the Bay Area, of boogaloo, roboting, and strutting, that reaches back into the 60s, long before hip hop. And so there was this dance culture that existed in the Bay Area up until hip hop came out of New York and the industries, and they're watching these movies being like, or they're watching things like Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk, and they're like, hold up, like, that's not even called the moonwalk, that's a backslide. Now the industry is like changing our cultural language because they didn't go deep enough, or they weren't willing to really seek out the grassroots kind of origin of this. And so we have a lot of misinformation out there. And so one of the film projects I'm working on now is I'm lucky enough to have access to, because that was the other thing too, is that a lot of producers in these particular cultures, like, you wouldn't have access to just come in as an outsider and document and like leave with your footage, and like, it's like, that's not happening, right? Like, you really have to kind of involve yourself in the culture. And personally, when I was in film school, I really loved making documentaries. Just because you're giving that platform to real life people. And in this case, these are people who are very talented, but they're not showing their talent to try to get famous. They're already certified in their neighborhoods. It's more so the rest of the world can see that, hey, this exists, and there's so much that we can learn from it. And so it's starting to, this history is starting to get out there a little bit more, but I'm learning, because I'm essentially a producer on this project. I'm learning that there are such nuance to how you go about doing business, that if you go to the wrong person with the wrong proposal, or with the wrong intention, then that gets figured out, and that can put you in a compromising position. So being a producer is not easy, is what I'm saying.
No, it's definitely not easy, and definitely I know
yeah.
Amanda can refer to that and everything, and it's definitely difficult, and you're right, there's so much of that history that is not covered and all. And actually, you brought up something that I'd love to hear from everybody about, which is kind of the importance of art as activists, because I definitely believe that arts as activists, and it seems to me that you do as well with some of the work that y'all are doing, Amanda. But before I get to that, I'm actually going to switch to topics just slightly, because I've also got, and I learned a little bit about you, Amanda, and I learned that you are a wine sommelier and a wine steward. And we've actually got a show here on our network, which Gwen Hurt does, because she's got her own wine called Shoe Crazy. So when I learned that you were a wine sommelier and a wine steward and everything, I was like, well, I've got to bring our expert wine person in from IBM TV so that y'all can at least have that part of the conversation as well. So tell a little bit about how you got involved in the whole wine aspect of what you do as well, and then we'll get back to the filmmaking as well. But I did want Gwen to meet you as well, so definitely I saw that connection and wanted that connection to be made.
Hi, Gwen.
Lovely to meet you.
Nice meeting you. I got into wine because I like it. I feel like I should be drinking it now. Yeah, it's just, I think it actually goes really well with this conversation. We're storytellers. Yes, I have a business and finance background, but I want to know the story behind that, right? I want to know the story behind a business. I want to know the story. How did you come up with a story or an idea for a film? And what's the story behind your wine? Because every glass of wine also has a story. Who made it? Where did it come from? What was the climate that year? What kind of grapes grew there? Is the family, a winemaking family? It's just, I think that those principles apply in filmmaking and food and wine and music. We build upon the things that came before us, right? And when we recognize, speaking to the art as activism, when we recognize that something is not right, we as artists, right? Business artists, finance artists, producers, we're still artists. We recognize that, and we have to take those proactive steps to make it different. So yeah, wine. I love wine.
That makes a lot of sense. And Gwen, if you would share a little bit with Amanda about Shoe Crazy, it is a family-owned business. It is a minority-owned business and everything. So I'm sure that she would love to learn more about your company as well. So that, of course, everybody on the platform pretty much knows about Shoe Crazy because you have the show on Friday. But she has some new folks that are watching from the filmmaking community that may not know about Shoe Crazy. So share a little bit about it.
Well, thank you, Mark, for having me here. I'm really excited. I love to talk about wine. And Amanda, the very same reason that you got into wine is the reason I got into wine. Like to drink it. That was one reason. I always thought one day I'd own a vineyard, when I retired. That didn't happen. I actually was downsized from the company I was with, and then in a car accident 2 days after that. And decided instead of, not doing anything, that I would go into the wine business without owning a vineyard. So I partner with vineyards to create the wines that we have in our bottles. So for a lot of folks in the wine industry, it's a new way of going in. It's called white label or private label or whatever. And initially, I put somebody else's wine in the bottle and said, that's what I'm selling. I started listening to my customers who said, we want something soft. We want something sweeter. We like soft on our, on the back of our throat. We don't like those big, bold wines. And so I started creating those with the winemakers, with the vineyards that I partner with. And so I actually trademarked the term soft palate wines. And I've tried to elevate those people that like sweet wines or softer wines, mostly blends, things like that. Unoaked, as you know. And so we transitioned from a more traditional palate wine, which is what I have. I love a Sauv Blanc. Let me tell you, from New Zealand, a big, bold cab. That's me. My customers weren't so keen on it. So a lot of our customers are women, a lot in the industry. And like you said, it tells a story. My wine sells because people can relate to the story. I lost my job. I was in a car accident, me and my daughter. We had a year of physical therapy. Instead of staying in that room and saying, this is a terrible thing that's happened, we built a wine business, and it tells that story and it resonates. And I knew that I could make Shoe Crazy into a national brand. I love shoes. That's why it's called Shoe Crazy. I one time had about 300, 400 pairs of shoes. I can't remember. I was trying to give Imelda Marcos a run for her money. But since I've learned that there are more important things in life than, owning 300-400 pairs of shoes, like paying your bills now. And so we've become, we've started to see the success in the wine business. We sell into big box retailers, your Walmart, Sam's Club, Total Wine and more, Food Lions. And so we've started to expand out. We sell in the military bases, and we tell our story. Like you said, people connect to a story. Yep. And when they can see that you can be knocked down, dragged through it, and still pick yourself up and stand up. And I think that's what filmmakers do, right? They have a story that we can relate to, right? Yeah. Some level. So I love it. Thank you for having me, Mark. And you guys did a great thing.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm glad to have you on in the conversation and everything. I know that Kim Calhoun, one of the founders of the network, oftentimes talks about the power of women entrepreneurs. And we've actually got 3 women entrepreneurs on here, along with me and Ramon and everything. So I'd love to hear all of you talk about the power of being an entrepreneur, and particularly a lady entrepreneur, and even some of the things that you've had to go through being an entrepreneur as a young lady and everything. So I'll actually start with Cara and then come to you, Amanda. And then I'd love to hear from Gwen as well. So I do know that sometimes it can be difficult being an entrepreneur, and particularly being a lady entrepreneur. So what are some of the things that you've had to deal with, Cara, in terms of being a lady entrepreneur?
Yeah, so it just all goes back to the story. What is your story? We all have one. And finding strength in that, and really, really knowing your why, and knowing that, your why, is going to reach other people and their why, and it's going to tug at them. And you're not always going to have everyone who's into your why. That's okay. But the people who are into that, who resonate with that, stay true to that. So with being a female entrepreneur, it's just staying strong and staying firm and your why and your story, and how your story can help others. And, I love being a female entrepreneur because, yes, like for me, because I am in a very intuitive line of work, like I feel all the feels, even when I don't want to. And so for me, I have to, really tap into that and, set boundaries around it, but also really find the strength in that, because it's not about me, it's about other people. So allowing other people to find strength in their own emotions, that when you don't feel them, it's going to translate in other areas in your life. It can mean emotional stuffing. It can mean, starvation. If you don't even say, if you say, I don't even have emotions, I don't know what you're talking about, it all can translate. The lack of emotions to fully feeling your emotions, it translates in all areas, especially gut health. And I like to say mental health is gut health, and vice versa. So being able, what can be a downfall, feelings, I just turn that into a superpower. So that's my superpower. And yeah, it's empowering and allowing women, other women, to feel that superpower as well. And I've had male clients who they're not going to feel their feelings as in depth as women, maybe not, but just the power of saying maybe I can set boundaries too. And just allowing people, men or women, being able to do that, that's some powerful stuff.
Yeah, and Amanda, I'd love to hear you talk about that as well, because I'm imagining, and I'm not sure about this 100%, but I'm thinking Hollywood. I'm thinking definitely even on the independent side, that as a producer, as the one that's kind of in charge of the purse strings and everything. And I know that even Kim talks about this in general in the engineering field, which is kind of her background and everything, that it's not exactly a female dominated field. So I'm imagining that you're catching a lot of grief because you are kind of in charge of the purse strings, but it is probably a male dominated field that you are in and everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Sure.
The fact that you are in a male dominated field, but you are a successful female entrepreneur.
Yeah, thank you. My background's in business and finance, and I can't tell you the number of times I've sat in a conference room and been the only woman.
Wow.
It's and coming into the industry, it's actually, I love it. I feel like it's because it's not just my story and my voice and my project. I'm in a position where I can amplify everybody else's voice, where we can amplify everybody else's story. And I would I read a lot of women entrepreneurs and books and things that they put out, a lot of women leaders, and I think one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away over my career is stay focused on your goal, your end goal, whatever it is, no matter how short or how far away it is, because there will always be haters. There will always be people trying to distract you. There will always be some fire happening somewhere else. But unless that fire is burning down your goal, don't get distracted. And that's been the biggest thing, I think. Find your people, right, that are going to help you and encourage you, and stick with them and tell them, listen, this is my goal. And you will be surprised at how much support you will get. And I think it goes for everybody, not just women entrepreneurs, but everybody who wants to make a difference. Because it's not, making films is awesome. Being a producer is awesome. Having the purse strings, yeah, of course, but it's not about me, right? It's about the 80 other people on set. It's about the story we're trying to tell. It's about, being able to have an impact that's so much greater. And I think that's leadership. And I think that the women in positions, we have the opportunity to amplify other voices. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gwen, you also came out of corporate America. You mentioned that earlier. You definitely came out of corporate America, and you're in an industry that is also probably very much not that
dominated.
Females in it as well. So definitely, I'm thinking that you have had to run across some of these negative things as well, some of these biases that folks may have. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Well, that's very true. It's interesting that it is a male-dominated industry for the most part. Women are eking their way in, I would say. But it's interesting that 80% of the wine purchased is purchased by women. Yet we don't control this industry. It's mind-boggling. And some of the things that I ran into prejudice because I don't own a vineyard. You're not a real winemaker, so that's one thing. And then the other is misogyny. I was told to get on my knees and beg, and you'd be surprised at some of the things I've gone through. And, if you want us to distribute for you, get on your knees. I'd say you'd never tell a man to get on his knees. This is crazy. I just took my wide in my little trolley and hit the door, and it's like you have to really not personalize some of the things that said. I walked into one room and I had a gentleman said, "Oh, you own this company?" And he threw all of my marketing materials on the floor and said, "Get the hell out." And I thought, as much as that material cost me, and I know how many bottles of wine I have to sell to pay for it, I refused to bend down and pick it up. I thought, I won't pick that up. I was shaking when I left there. And I thought, what crazy monsters are in this industry? And then I'd have to go back to what my mother would say. You are better than what they say you are. Because you walk with, brown skin. You walk in as a woman. You walk in, I'm over the age of, 40, a little bit, I'll say. So I walk in with 3 stripes. I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm a woman of a certain color, and I'm a woman. And it's like you get hit on all sides. And it's just, my mother would say, you are better than what they say you are. And that's the mantra that I would have to tell myself, to say, this is not about me. That's about them. And it's terrible. And that's what kept me going. Because if I didn't have that to hold on to and a sense of self-worth that came.
Yep, definitely.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense. Ramon, I was wondering if you
But
could
my
talk a little
mother,
bit. Oh, go ahead. When to drive
she
into we have
left
Yeah.
an abusive man with 4 kids and a can of pork headed north, and went on to earn 2 master's degrees. You know, so if I didn't have that,
yeah. Think with getting out of the area and cutting in and out and everything. But Ramon, definitely that's something that I know has been an issue in the hip hop industry as well. Some of the sexism and some of the racism that exists in that, and I know that that's definitely something that the Hip Hop Congress is all about trying to fight and all of that. So if you could share a little bit about the kind of work that y'all are doing to fight against some of that misogyny as well as some of the racism that exists, because I do know that that's something that the Hip Hop Congress is very much about.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we live in a patriarchal society. It was that way before any of us were born. What is really, really profound and interesting to for me to kind of reframe, even as a male, in my understanding of the system, you know, from a social justice perspective, we will never have equality in racial issues and economic issues if we're not talking about patriarchy and having equality across all genders. The reason I say that is because all of the isms that we suffer from as a society are all interrelated if you go to their very root of how they were enforced on humanity. And patriarchy is actually at the top of that list. There would be no racism if there wasn't patriarchy. I'll say that again. There would be no racism if there wasn't patriarchy. And why? Because in order to establish a separation of the races, you have to control a woman's right to choose whom she reproduces with. And so the anti-miscegenation laws had to be put in place to keep white separate from black, because whenever you have humans occupying the same space, you know, humans are going to get down how humans get down. And unless you're going to create incentives for them not to associate with each other, and these incentives were very, very brutal and deep, going from, you know, public shaming within your religious organization to losing your economic status if you were even seen associating with a person of another color. I mean, it doesn't even have to go as far as, you know, reproducing. It was like you can't even associate, but it was all kind of rooted in this fear of female choice. And so, you know, we have to talk about that as, you know, as the, you know, and it's like we got to talk about that. We can't not talk about that and try to talk about all of these other things like they're going to get solved without really talking about how these things still do get reinforced in our society. And you want to take a look at, you know, the business world. You know, you needed patriarchy to enforce racism. You needed racism to inform capitalism. At the very beginning, like you had to that capitalism as an economic tool. Not saying that ideologically it's bad. In theory, it's great, but how it was implemented in our country had very real racial, construction, and so we need to also be clear on how how oftentimes our priority on putting profit over people is it's like a another version of the same idea that was much more explicit back in the day. But it's like now it's like that's why being a business person, it's not just about having money, it's about how you use your money.
Yep.
And that's really the key thing. And I don't think we have enough conversations about, how to invest,
Right.
and how to invest, whether you have money, okay, how do you invest your money? If you don't have money, how do you invest your time?
Right.
What is sweat equity? How can you, if you're a community that doesn't have a lot of material wealth, how can you still use the strategies that of investment, of work and return and labor and things like that we all have, and I think that's a key point where we're at in our sort of social evolution and learning how to cross those lines, how to cross those barriers, and also knowing where, the standards of business that have been allowed to run rampant for so long, like misogyny and like all of these things, where that now hurts your business, right? And that should be the case. Standards are now being, put out there. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's powerful, but he's doing all this stuff on the side, and like people are coming out and airing this out, and it needs to happen, because otherwise we're implicitly saying that that's acceptable, and and that's not good for our society. So
Ron, that's such a great point, and I want to amplify what you're saying, right? And I think that's important. Just for our production company, we do profit share. We make any money on the movie, every single person makes money on the movie, right? And it's important to me to be able, like, for the Stairs, which we'll talk about, maybe later, is our cast and crew, 50-50 women and men.
Wow.
60% were self-identified people of color. Like, it was it's very, very important to us as a production company to live what we say, right? Like, you amplify these messages and be that voice.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen something today. I know that even Cara did as well, because she's in Cincinnati, and she was actually involved in some of the Black Lives Matter struggles that were going there in Ohio and everything. And she made it a conscious effort to go and be involved in those struggles and things of that nature. And I did want to get to the Stairs, so will get to a little bit of sharing of that as well. But definitely, Cara, if you would, definitely share a little bit about why that was so important to you, because I do know that we've had conversations about why that was important to you to be involved in those struggles and everything. So I'd love to hear your share a little bit about the importance of that, being involved in the Black Lives Matter movement stuff that was going on there in your home area of Ohio.
Well, it's just about, talking the talk and walking the walk, know. By the way, Ramon, huge microphone to you. Amazeballs. So thank you. Yes. If it were on the other foot, our world would be different. So let's just put it that way. And, it's just important to have that accountability for yourself and for others. There are so many people who, in general, they don't realize that they accept and that they also give off, like, toxic masculinity and, racism and all this, like, all of these traits. Like, if you're not aware, you're going to keep doing this. And sometimes you're not self-aware. So other people, like, and society in general, just being able to feel like they have a voice, or someone just getting fed up and having their voice, that is so crucial. And enough is enough. So we all just need to have our own opinion, speak our own mind, and just in my own little bubble, it's a no-brainer. I'm from a small town and living in, like, a small city, so it's just a no-brainer. Just being able to be a human with other humans and say that the crap that's going on locally and nationally just needs to not happen. So, and it's crazy, I think we all have these preconceived notions pushed on us, and people are always trying to knock each other down and take away each other's power. And, all of us have that voice and that chance to be able to set an example and be like, no, that isn't acceptable. And you don't have to be, in the film industry or whatever, but it definitely helps. And I think both of you, it's amazing that you use your voices for good, and that it's not just cavalier, that you demand representation and that you talk the talk and walk the walk. Like, hands down, hats off to both of you. So
Yeah, definitely some great ideas that y'all are both saying and everything. And I know that Ramon, he said he's got to bounce off very shortly and everything. But one of the things he talked about was, and I do want to get to you, Amanda, and the stare, but I know education is very important to him and everything. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of education, because I actually sometimes think that the arts doesn't get enough respect in the education field, and I think that we could do better in that regard. But I'd love to hear from all of you the importance of education and the importance of arts education, to be specific.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback off of what Kara was just saying. She said that, we're born into this world with all these preconceived notions, and it's like we come to this planet pretty innocent, pretty open slate, and then we start to become influenced or conditioned by the norms of the time that we're born into. And so if we're not educating our children as early as possible to give them the capacity to be able to look at the world with a critical lens, and know that there's this perspective, but then there's also this perspective, and allowing children to make their own choices, but giving them the range of spectrum of perspectives that's out there so that they can do that. Oftentimes it's like we're giving them a choice, but it's like when it comes to the art perspective, it's like, what do you want to learn today? We can learn, math, science, and history and English, and then we'll have an art class. But it's like, the importance of the arts in this is that arts is where is the subject where you can make your own choice. It's not just, oh, I have to learn these external rules that everybody else understands, but no, I need to find what's within me. Art is the subject of yourself. And so if we don't have that, and I really believe that, because when you look at early childhood education, preschool, things like that, the younger that you are, you have to have some sort of creativity involved to keep attention, right? If you try to, if you're trying to teach little kids without singing songs and without having compelling visuals, like, good luck. It's really when we start to get into the grade school and it becomes about earning a grade, where now you start to see that conditioning come in of, oh, now we're conditioning people to work for a group, not for themselves, or and so we're conditioned from a really young age. That's me, or okay, pause for a second. To kind of accept these norms that feed into our market structure. Because that hierarchical kind of thing of like, okay, I gotta make these grades, these benchmarks. Well, now today you're looking at sort of an upheaval of that education system because of things like COVID and forcing people to go virtual. And it's like, how are you going to motivate kids to turn on a camera and learn something when there's so many different things that they could be doing? And so now I'm finding in my field that it's making art that much more important, so that kids are motivated to want to come to class and be like, oh, what are we going to watch today, or what activities are we going to do? But I've always believed that if we were to have a not broken education system, we would have never made art a separate subject. It would have remained integrated into every subject and used as a vehicle for us to learn these subjects. Because even if you just take music alone, it's mathematical, it's a science, it's language arts, it's history. Like it is your way to engage on any topic. And the best teachers know that, right? They're not just trying to say, listen to my word. I mean, they know they need that art support to keep their students' attention and respect. And so that's what I hope when we come back from all of this and we're rebuilding our society. Like, I know there's enough people that understand this and have been doing the work to show the we be going for our future. So I just hope that it reaches enough. We are. I don't know if anybody just heard what I just said. Did I cut out?
You cut out a little bit. You cut out the last part of what you were saying.
I was dropping the gem right there. I was just saying that I hope we go into we come back from this, and that the all the groundwork that's being laid by the teaching artists and the people that Hip Hop Congress represent and everything gets to the ears of the people with the financial means to invest into it, because that's the only thing that's missing. Like we've figured out what needs to happen even without resources. A lot of times it's not having resources that makes you figure out, okay, what works on just an organic human to human level. Okay, this works. Okay, now we need to scale up. So, that's where the conversation comes in with, with investors and people that can recognize the value of that, know that it's connected to, our evolution as a species. And we just need to, get that going, make that the new normal. And so I'm glad to be on in that whole process. I'm glad to be in the position to say, I've been doing this for 15 years now. I've been able to, longer than that, but I've been able to pivot with everything that's happening in the world.
Yeah,
I'm still in a position to keep pushing that. And not a process yet. The need has only gotten more and more, like, to find like-minded people to come together on platforms like this, to share the information, and to know, like, there's more answers out there than they're giving us through the news. You know what I mean? Like in some of this information, you got to get directly from the source. So, so I appreciate you having me on today, Mark. It's wonderful to meet you, Amanda and Cara. I hope we can build outside of the show. I'm on this social media and everything, my name, and as an artist and the organization Hip Hop Congress. And I'm about to go teach an online class to third graders right now. So
sounds great. Definitely appreciate you. Thanks a lot, and definitely appreciate you being on and giving all of that wealth of wisdom and everything. So definitely appreciate you being on. Look forward to having you back on in the very near future as well. So what are your thoughts about that? Because definitely I do agree that we do need to have more conversations about the role of art as educator and all of that. So artists as an educator. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, Amanda. So I do know that that's probably something important to you as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, anytime you can teach somebody in a way that they're receptive to it, it's a win, right? And kids are receptive to fun. So, adults are even receptive to fun. So you slip messaging or good habits into something that's palatable, like I'm going to pivot with The Stairs. It's a horror film, right? But there's subtle things in there that deals with bullying, that deals with family, that deals with friendship. Like, there's themes in there that are really, universal and important, just in this nice packaging of a scary film. So I think it's important, not even just, like educating on a grand scale, right? With kids in classrooms and art and music and, but we need it because architects, they need art and math and science and building, right? So
yeah, we definitely need that education and everything. And tell me, what got you into horror films? Because that's actually something that sometimes scares me. Oh, and there's Cara got a thought. And I definitely going to have Cara give her thought as well. But I am kind of curious as to what got Amanda into horror films, because even though I judge Nevermore and I definitely watched enough horror films, I would not say that I am a horror film super fan. Definitely more into the intrigue and mystery parts of what Nevermore does than the straight horror. But definitely your film does have some blood and gore. We'll get ready to show a trailer in a little bit, and folks will see a little bit of that and everything. But definitely, Cara, I'm going to have you make your comment before we get into The Stair and everything, because I think the folks would need to see a little bit of the clip of what this is all about as well.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Sorry, I had to cut in because I'm a former educator. So I have to talk about kids and art and just kind of add to the conversation. You're 100% right. Adults benefit from art, any type of art. And it does translate into math and science. It all connects. I mean, heck, if you make something, if you even make your own Play-Doh, that's math and science right there. You make your own pottery, math and science. And, art, any type of art, it is establishing self-expression. It is establishing an identity. So if you are growing up in a system that stifles that or does not have that opportunity, it is so easy to get lost in the shuffle. And it's so sad to see that in children, especially because they either grow up not really knowing how to do that or they're playing catch up as adults. So 100%, just arts and kids, so necessary. And I'm not much of a movie buff. I don't know. I get overloaded, like too much in my brain and my eyes. I don't know. I have stuff going on. I'm like, this is too much. But self-expression, identity. It's you're playing different identities, but you're establishing something, and like that is so incredibly important for people to see that and see it in a way that represents them and their truth. So important.
You touched on this like subject of play and having space to just play, and I think that's as adults we get into this routine, but being able to carve out that space of just play, not just as kids. Yeah, it's important.
I will like assemble my own jigsaw puzzles, or like I'll have my own like a dance party in my kitchen. I don't care, you just have to do that. So important. And it's so funny, even in my business, people are like, oh, I can do that. Like there's some weird camera in their apartment, monitoring their every move. Like, yes, you're allowed to live. You're allowed to be weird, whatever you feel that you can express, just express it.
And speaking of expression, tell folks a little bit about, because I am going to bring up that clip, what the Stare is about and all of that, and how definitely they can go to the Carolina Theater, which is our local theater house. It's part of the Nevermore Film Festival, so I know that y'all are one of the films that folks can catch by seeing it and everything, and it is definitely going to be shown. Like I said, I know last year we actually had it physically at the Carolina Theater, and I'm actually on their board, and I enjoyed meeting a lot of you filmmakers there in person, but unfortunately this year with COVID and everything, that's not happening. I get to meet y'all through this platform and other platforms as well. But definitely share a little bit about what the Stare is all about, and then I will bring up that trailer that you also gave me as well.
Great. So, I mean, first of all, I have to say thank you to Nevermore. Thank you for having me on. And the Stairs is an interesting concept where this grandson and grandfather go out hunting. It's his first hunting trip, and they find a staircase in the woods, and grandpa and grandson disappear. And 20 years later, a group of friends go out hiking, having a little 5-day journey out in the woods, and they find the same set of stairs. And all sorts of shenanigans happen, and I don't want to spoil it. All sorts of shenanigans happen, and there's things, and I think it has, there's a lot of points in the film where we address, bigger issues in life regarding, and it's not just a straight horror film. It's not a gore fest. I was like, this isn't going to happen. But it's, I think, suspenseful and thrilling, and has a great message, and everybody should see it.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Sounds amazing. We're going to get at least a clip of it right now. So
great, thank you.
Get a chance to check it out and everything, because you did send me the trailer, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, we might have to start it over.
Yep. We'll start it over. That's okay. We can do that. It's the magic of the internet.
I don't know what happened to the sound.
Hold on a second. We're going to see what happened with that. Sometimes the sound decides to have a moment of its own, but that might be on my side.
We have an ensemble cast. John Schneider from Smallville and Dukes of Hazzard is in it. Kathleen Quinlan from Apollo 13 and Event Horizon is in it.
Well, yes, it was at the sound was at the top level, but we're going to try it one more time just to see about getting it everything. But I'm going to go back in a second, and we're going to try one more time and see if sound won't work one more time. And I'm going to hit that stop button right now.
Sure.
But definitely, we're going to come back to it and see if we can't get the sound going. And while we're getting the sound going, we'll bring in a gentleman who is a filmmaker from another part of the world. So David Rowley is a filmmaker out of Scotland. So he's got all kinds of questions. He's actually definitely talking and enjoying the conversation. And I know he might even have some questions about filmmaking and production and all of that, and even getting producers, because I know that is one of his interests, is definitely podcasting, filmmaking, and a number of other things. So David, glad you were able to join us. And what kind of questions did you have for Amanda and everything? Because we've been having just a general conversation. So I'm sure you may have some things that you were interested in knowing as well.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on again. Hi, Cara. Good to see you. And then good to meet you. Good to meet Amanda. I've just called the last 10, 15 minutes, and I saw a short clip of your film, and I hope you're going to find this. It was gory and quite harrowing.
It's pretty thrilling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite thrilling and everything. We're going to try one more time.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to see what happens.
You can find it on YouTube. It is on YouTube. The Stairs.
One more time. Okay. What happens? Oh, that's not what we want. That's
you can
us.
find it on YouTube. It is on YouTube. The Stairs.
So we're going to pull it up one more time and see what goes on in that regards while we're continuing our conversation. But yes, they can go to get the Stairs on YouTube, but I'm going to try to pull it up one more time and all of that. But I don't think I ever heard from both of you, Cara, and from you as well, Amanda, about the importance of activism and arts and all of that. We kind of touched on it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And you definitely even talked about this. And I know that every Tuesday we have a filmmaker, Henny Morales, that does a whole Celebrity Tuesdays, and he's actually got a company that deals with a lot of issues, and he's got a lot of films that he shows regularly, and we do a show every Tuesday with the company that he is part of. And actually, I think the company is called RevShare, if I remember correctly, and everything. But I was loving to hear your thoughts about the importance of the arts as an activist tool.
Sure. Carrie, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, art and activism, it's, from a bird's eye view, I guess, just looking at it. For me, just growing up and just looking at media in general, like, art is a making in history, and oftentimes it can overshadow history. And when you think of the Titanic, people in my generation, they think more of Leonardo DiCaprio, right? And they don't think of the actual event of Titanic. And it is so important to be able to capture that as accurately as possible, because otherwise you're erasing the history that actually happened, and you're creating your own history. And what I love about the last few years, especially with Me Too and Time's Up, and then with Black Lives Matter, is it is so important to have representation, because that is history for people. That is their only exposure to a lot of things related to history. And if we can just represent it correctly and, again, as accurately as possible, we're doing everyone a service. And, I don't know. It just needs to happen more and more and more.
No, definitely agree with you on that. Amanda, what are some of your thoughts about that? Just the role of arts in terms of the activism field.
Yeah. So I feel like as I've worked through my career and gotten older, you get into positions where you have to make a choice, right? Are you going to advocate for those people that are creative artists, brilliant in their own ways, and don't have anybody else to support them to get their message out? Are you going to be that person that's going to help them? Or are you going to be the person that exploits that, right? And I think that there's a big difference between advocation and exploitation, obviously. But even in the arts, you know, I mentioned before, it's important for us as a production company to pick projects that have a message, right? And then also to be able to profit share with our crew, because it takes everybody. In any business, it takes everybody from the top all the way down to the bottom. And I think because it takes everyone should see a piece of that pie, right? So there's always a way to do it better. And I think art as activism is a way to push that boundary of being able to do things better. You know, artists and creative, those are the people that think outside the box. They don't live in black and white. I live in an Excel spreadsheet. I love black and white, but I need those creative people around me, right? And I need to celebrate them, and I need to amplify their voices, because otherwise I would just sit in my little black and white Excel spreadsheet, and and there wouldn't be much fun in that.
How important do you think it is for artists? You were just, as you were thinking about financing, and I was thinking about filmmaking, to get involved with, like, say, the Patreons? Because I have a friend of mine that's an author, and I know that she uses Patreon. I know somebody else that's actually involved in the wellness field, kind of like what Cara does and everything. And she's very much with the Patreon as a way to get her funds. A friend of mine who's a funk musician is thinking about using the Patreon. And then, of course, there are other ones that are out there as well. I know that there's some that are even more specifically creative based and everything. But how important do you think it is for artists to use those tools in order to get some financing as well? Or do you think that those tools are a little bit overused, for lack of a better term, and that they're not as successful for, say, the filmmaker? Because I've even seen some filmmakers try to use Kickstarter and try to use some of the other ones that are similar to Kickstarter. But it seems to me that it's probably better if you do something similar to what y'all are doing, what I think Kenny is doing as well, which is kind of that rev share model, where you're trying to share the model across all the people involved, whether it's the lowly, and I'm not saying lowly in that sense, but whether it's the janitor on the set or whether it's the person that's the star on the set. But it sounds like everybody is going to get some sort of returns, whereas there's a lot of these other folks that are using these other platforms. What have been your thoughts about using those platforms, whether it's Patreon, whether it's Kickstarter, whether it's a number of the other ones that exist out there?
Sure. Yeah. So Amanda Palmer is on Patreon, and she's, a huge advocate of it. And I think Patreon is great. 100% on board with all of these platforms are really great for different reasons, right? Patreon is great if you have a very loyal following and you have your thing that you're doing, and this is right. And then you start getting it, and then it seems like the bigger and bigger, you kind of move up, right? Kickstarter. I know a lot of very successful Kickstarter campaigns. They've pulled in a lot of money to be able to do what they wanted to do, and it worked really, really well for them. For us as a production company, because we like to have a lot of control over our projects and what gets put out and the press, and we like to be able to give some of that back to our crew. We do it all privately. So we have private investors, we have private people that help us get these projects going. And so then my job is to make sure that they make their money back, right? Right. And the more I can do that, the more people want to get involved. And I think that's a piece of being an advocate for art, is not just giving your $5 per thing on a Patreon or giving your $100 on a Kickstarter. Is there's a responsibility for the artist or the people like me as a producer. What do those people supporting you? What do you give back to them, right? Is it just philanthropy, Or is it something like, hey, I don't want to invest in just this project. I want to invest in your idea. I want to invest in the bigger picture, right? We're not just investing in one film that the production company is. We want to invest in whatever you're doing. And it's my job as the producer, as the person who writes the checks, to make sure that those people get their money back, right? And make sure that the people that were on the set are taken care of when this film sells. Because it's all of us together, right? Nevermore is a big part of it. Everybody on here in the podcast is a big part of it. All of our cast and crew on every project are a part of it, and including our investors, which, you make them happy, you get to do another project and more people get paid. This is, like, my job is to keep people employed.
That makes a lot of sense. And as you were saying that, I know even here on the international broadcast media, our founders have been looking at finding investors, looking at finding folk to kind of like help make this platform even bigger than it is. I mean, it's heard on several countries around the world, and it definitely has several shows. I think at one count we were like around 70 or something like that. So definitely there is a creation of a international podcasting network and all of that, but they are also looking for investors. So what kind of advice do you give to folks when they are looking for investors, and what, like, even in your own filmmaking and in your own role as a producer, what kind of things do you look for in an investor, and when do you know that that person is actually going to be good as an investor? And I'll just give an example. I know that a friend of mine, actually at the Carolina Theater, he used to be the rental director there. He used to talk about how everybody was a producer until it came time to cut the check, because he was literally in charge of like doing the rent and all of that. So he had a number of things that he were kind of his Ray Pascal's isms and everything, but one of them was that everybody was a producer until it was time to cut a check, because everybody had these great ideas about what concert they wanted to do, what thing they wanted to do in the house, whether it was a comedy show, whether it was whatever. But then when it came time to actually write the check, they disappeared. So that was wondering your thoughts about that as well, as to what you look for when you go for an investor.
Yeah, so I want to work with people that want to work with me, right? I want to work with people that believe in this idea that we're going to do it together. But I also, in the early conversations of investors is we have a director, we have a sound crew, we have a composer, these are specialized jobs in this particular project. So your job as an investor is to invest in the belief that we can do our jobs. Right? Your job as an investor is to, when this project is done, get out there and tell everybody what a great experience it was, and there's everything that I'm going to do to make sure that that experience is as good as possible, right? Bring them to set, take them to dinner, do the nice things that you do to people who believe in you and your ideas and your process. And it can be, music, it can be film, it can be art, it can be painting, it can be sculpture, it could be a building, even your house. You have an investor in your house, right? The bank. Right. And the bank wants to be happy. And sometimes you go and you bring them cookies, and sometimes you just make your mortgage payment every month. But being able to really have that relationship with the people that support you, and it could be through Patreon or through Kickstarter, but being able to really build upon those relationships and say, I'm here for you, right? To the investor, my job, I work for you. And I'll work for you because I want to keep all these people employed. I want to be able to make this art. I want to be able to impact at a broader level than we could each do individually.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I know another thing we've talked about here on this platform and everything is the fact that a lot of times folks are also interested in what I call products, and whether that's product placement. And I don't know whether you have any in the film or not. I know that a friend of mine actually stuck one in his latest podcast and everything, and that was actually, he's going to see whether he can get any interest from a major soda or it's something, or a major drink. I'll just say that because it was Monster. I'll just go ahead and tell you what it is. It's Monster. He's going to see whether Monster will actually come on board and everything. But definitely he was doing that. I know that definitely Brandon has a whole line of things that he's got, and he's actually helped me create a small line as well. So I've got like a cup and a t-shirt, and I know Brandon's got everything from like a pillow on down to, I think, keychains and things along that nature. And he's kind of the guy that does one of our our travel show, our main travel show here on this network. But how important do you think it is to have products as part of what you do in terms of getting the word out about the film in general? So, I mean, does the Stairs have like some sort of stair horror cup or something?
We don't have product placement, but we did. Remember, I was talking earlier about you make 1,000 phone calls and sometimes you'll get a yes.
Yes.
So Columbia Sportswear, which is a company that is based here in the Pacific Northwest, big into hiking clothes, and it's a hiking horror movie. They stepped up and they really helped us out with a lot of our wardrobe, with a lot of our hiking gear.
That's great.
It was one of those phone calls like, well, who do I have to talk to get a yes or a no? And you make 1,000 phone calls and you hope that you get a yes. And in this particular instance, we did get a yes. There were quite a few different companies and locations and people that were like, you're doing this film. And a big piece of it, I don't want to say it's just phone calls, right? But my production partner, Drago, he's been in the film industry for 20 years. He's a stunt coordinator. And he's volunteered his time over the last 20 years to different independent projects that couldn't afford a stunt coordinator to make sure that their stunts were safe on set. So when it came time for him to direct his first film, The Stairs, all those people that he coordinated for, all those people that he donated time for, they're like, well, what can we do to help? Like, hey, we're looking for this. Oh yeah, let me call up my friend. Oh, hey, we need, extra tables or chairs, or can you pick up Starbucks coffee in the morning, right? All those people, maybe they didn't have $1, but they had a car and they were going to go and pick up croissants for the, So it's really a team effort, and it's really being able to volunteer your time, to express your passion, and to, be able to be there for people when they need, because at some point that's going to come back. They'll be like, oh, it's your first film that you're directing. What can I do to help you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to try, and I'm pretty sure Kara and David may have questions as well, but we're going to try one more time to see if we can get the Stairs teaser going, and hopefully the sound is going to cooperate this time and all of that. So we're going to see whether it's going to work as it does that whole little roundabout thing.
We're not really seeing anything.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
It's trying to have a moment of its own. Oh, I see what happened. That was one of those technical problems with StreamYard. Unfortunately, StreamYard was having one of its moments. So while I pull that up and everything, Kara, did you have any questions that you wanted to share or think about in terms of just the whole filmmaking community that definitely Amanda is a vital part of, and all of that?
Well, I love the fact that it is more involved than you just initially think. Of course, the normal person thinks, yeah, there are people who, do this and that, but to really listen to you talk about all the moving pieces and all the moving parts, I think it's great, because it's when you have a passion in general, no matter what your passion is, for you it's films, which sounds amazing, and for others it's something else, and for me it's health and coaching people. So whatever passion you have, it's bigger than yourself. Yep. And so being able to be like, yeah, this is what I want to achieve, but it's for you, and how can this be done for you, for on a grander scale, and having that support so that you can help each other out. And that is so essential, because when you're working with other people, they have other passions as well, and it's just about just helping each other out. And for you, sounds like a whole bunch of moving parts, which sounds pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, travel schedules, and oh yeah.
Yes.
So you got you would know.
I find it like it's like a 3-dimensional moving puzzle that you're trying to put together that you hope doesn't collapse before you get it together.
And it's still moving.
Yeah.
That's an interesting analogy. I want to hear more about this analogy of the 3 puzzles and everything. And let's see if it works this time.
Is everything okay? Everything is gonna be fine. Just
Little better.
What did you see? You can tell me. I know what I saw, but I want to know what all of you saw. You're gonna be okay. We're all gonna be okay. This is far from okay, man. You all are acting like seeing a maggot baby and a man shooting himself in the head as a normal day of hiking. What are you, scared of some stairs in the woods?
Wow.
Dutch lady.
Yes, I am scared of some stairs in the woods because I don't know what there's in those stairs in the woods, and that's one of the things about horror movies that I've always been puzzled about. Because oftentimes, and this is just my thought on horror movies, and I'd love to hear all of y'all's thoughts because I've had this conversation with friends of mine. It always seems that there's always the fact that you know that the monster is there, but you still go into the room even though you know the monster is there. I don't care whether it was like Jaws, everybody knew that the shark was eating everybody and everything, and those other ones that you know, you've already lost several people already, and the folks still go down to visit the person. And I'm going like, did we just lose somebody down there? Did we lose 4 people down there? But you still keep on going. So that's always what I've always been puzzled about with horror movies in general and scary movies. Is I'm sitting there going like, it's the logical person in me going like, wait a minute, we've already eliminated half the crew and everything. So why do we keep going back to that same area?
Yeah, it's the human condition, right? It's the like fight or flight, paralyzed with fear, or and we're innately curious, right? Our little primal brains are like, that can't happen. That's not real. So
yeah,
I love it.
That's very much true. But you were using that analogy, and I'd love to hear you kind of go further into explanation about that, about the fact of it being like, this card that you're stacking up and you're hoping that they don't come crumbling down and all of that. So definitely explain that, because I'm thinking that there's so many things that you have to do as a producer. And some folks are probably thinking, all they got to do is just keep, like you said, that Excel spreadsheet and keep a couple of things on the notes, on the computer, on the laptop, whichever form of computers that you use or whatever. And they're probably thinking that it's an easy job. I actually have some friends that are producers, including my friend who's been on this show before, Ronnie Warner, who's he did that film This Christmas. So I know that it is not an easy job. He was a producer and an actor, so he's actually mixed the jobs up and all of that. But I know that it's a very difficult job, but some people might think it's incredibly easy job. So when folks tell you that it's an easy job, what do you say about that?
Walk a mile in your shoes, right? Like, it's the producer, decides on the project, raises the money, hires everybody, pays everybody, tries to sell the project after it's completed, and then, tries to pay back their investors. And in the meantime, you maybe get some sleep. Making a movie, I feel like it's definitely a 3-dimensional puzzle that you're trying to solve, and it's fighting you the whole time. It changes every moment of every day, and you're just trying to figure out, you've got certain people for certain days, you've got trucks for certain days, you've got food at certain times, and the timing of everything could be like, hey, there's lunch is ready in 15 minutes, and you still have 4 or 5 takes to get through before you can wrap everybody for lunch. So if you like solving problems and solving puzzles, then producing is for you.
And what about the fact that, and some of the artists are this way and everything, but what about folks that are also a little bit, in my mind, creative people we don't really believe in sleep, because sometimes we'll have friends that'll call me and they'll be like, did you get there? Well, I've told Carl before, I've got certain friends who will ask me whether I've eaten breakfast or lunch or things of that nature. And then I've also got friends that will ask me as well, have you actually gone to sleep yet? Because sometimes we're so many with that creative mindset and everything along that line. And I don't even know, Amanda, whether you've got to juggle what your work is with your family. And if you have family, do they ever sit there going like, will you ever come and like join the family outings and things of that nature? Or how much of a work balance life kind of attitude do you have? Because I know I've even had conversations about how sometimes we have to get day jobs, and those day jobs interfere with what we want to do as creatives. But I imagine that even producers, even though y'all have the purse strings, y'all also have to work your regular job, whether that's accounting, whether that's being a business or whatever else. So how do you balance all of this together with family and everything else that might be in your life?
Well, very carefully. There wasn't much balance during filming, because during the process of filming it's tough. So on the stairs we shot 2 weeks of days and then 2 weeks of nights. So the first week of days I got 8 hours of sleep total.
Wow.
in the week. Yeah. And then the last 2 weeks of night shooting, I think our call times were like 4:30 or 5 o'clock at night, and then we'd wrap at 6 or 7 in the morning. And I'd go home and I'd take a shower, and I'd have to do all the day stuff, right? The banks are open, the post office is open, meetings are during the day. So I'd get to bed at about 2 in the afternoon to turn around and wake up for a 4:30 call time and be up all night.
Wow.
Yeah, so during filming that doesn't happen, but once you're wrapped and everybody kind of goes home and you have all the pieces and you're trying to put it together, then you can get back more on a schedule of like, all right, I always take a week off afterwards and just sleep and do nothing and stay in my pajamas. But the post-production process and prior to filming and after filming, it becomes more routine, right? You can actually get a night's sleep. You have meals at a certain time. Yeah. You're on yeah, Nancy Fry. See, filmmaking is not for the faint of heart. Yeah. It's like boot camp, going through the Navy SEAL process for a month.
Wow. And Matt, one of the things I was going to ask you is, I'm trying to figure this out because if somebody's interested, is Wandering Dragon only doing its internal projects? Like I said, a lot of the projects are projects that y'all have a passion for. You definitely have your business partners and everything, and of course, y'all are trying to work as a team with everybody that's involved. Or do y'all ever look for outside projects? Because I do know that there are a number of film projects we've actually got, and I invited him to come on the show, but I think his schedule might have got busy. But one of our shows that we do regularly here is a show where they literally whiteboard ideas and things of that nature, and they do that every Sunday and all of that. So talking upstream. So Zach Wiseman and a couple of other folks are very much involved in that project and everything. But I was just wondering, do y'all ever look for outside projects, or is it all stuff that is in the internal family?
Nope, we're always on the lookout for a great script and a great project. And I've read, I don't know, over the last 6 months, COVID has changed a lot. I've read over 100 scripts, some of which I really like, some of which, could use some work. But we're always looking for the next project. And it's not, what we look for as a production company is different than what, Sony looks for, we look for specific things that we know that we're really good at and that we can do well. So yeah, I'm always on the lookout for exciting partners or script writers or even storytellers that maybe they don't have screenwriting experience, but they have a really great story. You know what? We can work with that.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely have to tell Zach and Dylan, that's the two folks that are the primary people behind Talking Upstream that. But like I said, they have whiteboarded ideas and things of that nature. I actually kind of disrupted the system when they had me as a guest, because for a minute there, they were doing their shows live on Sundays. Now they're pre-recording them. So when they pre-recorded them, usually they have two ideas. One is Dylan's idea and one is Zach's idea. And the person that's coming on the show is supposed to pick one of their ideas. I decided to blend the ideas together because that's just the kind of guy I am. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't think that you need to have just your idea or your idea. Let's figure a way to blend the two ideas together. And I think that they put up a script that actually worked the ideas, and it actually, in my mind, came out pretty well at everything. But I do know that they've got a number of things, everything from period pieces to a number of other kind of pieces. So I would definitely have to let them know about Wandering Dragon, and hopefully they can get in touch with y'all and hopefully find a way to get involved, because I do know that that's kind of the whole concept of Talking Upstream, is for them to create all of these different products, and it might be comic books, it might be TV series, it might be web episodes, it might be full movies or short movies, and then turn those into productions, as they say, picked up by somebody like a Wandering Dragon or picked up by a Netflix. They don't care who picks it up. They're just going to create hundreds of products, and hopefully somebody will pick up one of them.
Yeah. No, I love hearing pitches. I've heard a ton of them, but I love it. I love being a part of that like early creative process. Yeah.
What is one of the worst pitches that you've heard, in the sense of, and you don't have to say the name of the film, but just the sense of the concept, and one of the better pitches that you've heard? I'd love to hear like some ideas of what you've felt was a good pitch concept and something that you sat there going like, that's not going to work. And like I said, you don't have to name the filmmakers or even go into the name of the film, but if you can just give like an overview of what the plot points might have been.
Well, first of all art is valid.
Right.
We, as a production company, we look for very specific things for our company. It's important to us to have representation, both men, women, people of color. It's important to us to have a story that has some sort of emotional hook, rather than just, whatever the story is. And it's important to us because we have access to stunts and special effects in a way that, not a lot of indie production companies having that production value. So I probably wouldn't choose a period piece drama. Right. Just because it doesn't lean into our strengths, and but that doesn't mean that there isn't another amazing production company that would choose a period piece drama, right? I'm going to lean more into something where I can blow something up, I can light somebody on fire, I can like have a lot of guns and action, or somebody falling from a high height, car chases. We lean into that production value.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like no rom-coms for you, and there's like a high-speed chase or someone like falling.
Not. I mean, you never know, right? And I would never say never, but at the moment, I would say that our production company, because Drago is really known for his stunt work and special effects work, that's what we lean into. And I have a great resource in him. I'm like, hey, can we blow this up in this film? And he's like, yeah, of course we can. So
that sounds amazing.
Sounds like a great thing.
I want to just like watch.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. He's done fireworks, at the Space Needle and for the Seahawks. He's blown up a 40-foot yacht in a harbor. He's, he has over 1,000 body burns.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I try to lean into this production value that I can get really relatively inexpensive.
Wow.
Yeah, I can understand that, but like I said, I'm just getting over how many body burns he's got, and he's still sitting there walking around and everything. That's a whole lot of body burns. But I'm also always amazed by the way that pyrotechnics work anyway, because I know that we even have them here for the 4th of July and for a number of other things. Is COVID going to actually impact that industry? Because I'm imagining that the rules are going to change as well for pyrotechnics and all of that. Am I correct in thinking that? Because I'm thinking that's going to change a lot in that aspect of the entertainment industry also.
Yeah, COVID has impacted the industry in ways in which we didn't foresee at all. Obviously there's the health piece, right? You have to make sure that everybody's masked. You have to make sure that there's hand sanitizer. You have to make sure that, there's somebody on set to make sure that all the rules are being followed. So the price of production goes up about 20%.
Wow.
With testing and with, because you have to test everybody all the time. You have to do contact tracing. And pyrotechnics is, so specialized, and there's so many people that have to be in a small space. It's really hard to have your 6 feet social distance, even if you are masked, even if you are, getting tested. So it's, COVID's affected everything. In filming, you've got your actors and maybe the scene is, they're 6 feet apart, but you have a monitor where your director is supposed to be. You've got your, sound crew there that have to be 6 feet apart. You've got your first assistant director. You've got your script supervisor. Like you've got 6, 7, 8 people in a very tight spot. So yeah, it's tricky.
It sounds like it's tricky, and I'm imagining that's made your job even more difficult as well. Because, like you said, I know even at the Carolina Theater and even at some other venues that I'm aware of, they've had to do some thing. They've had to incorporate things that are part of COVID protocol. So whether that's getting the temperature checks, whether that's getting the whole kind of ways to make sure that people are actually having what they need, whether that's the mask, whether that's the hand sanitizers. So I'm imagining, like you just said, that it's probably, you just said it's added 20%, and I could even see in some places where it could even be more than that and everything. And of course, we've also seen where it's limited what you can do in the sense of the size and everything. Like I know that they just, the Super Bowl is going to be in not this Sunday, but the Sunday after, and there's going to be a whole lot less people there in Tampa than there usually would be at a Super Bowl, even though they're going to have a number of frontline workers that they've given tickets to and some other folks, but it's still going to be a lot less. And I've even remember watching a news report where they were talking about how they were literally going to have to almost get people get the ticket and get almost like a on-the-spot test to make sure that you didn't have COVID as you went into the venue, and of course having even less people in whatever the venue was. But it sounds like they're going to use some modern tech in order to make this happen, which I'm imagining that since it's new, is also going to be expensive. So I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of these other costs that you're also going to have to add into what you're doing as well. So are you already seeing that, where you're seeing new costs that you were not having before in your newer works and everything?
Yeah, I mean, Cara, this impacts you, I'm sure. Like on film set, we have to feed people, and usually it's a buffet style, and you can't do that. You have to do individually packaged. You can't eat together anymore, at a big long table. Everybody eats in their cars or outside or separately. So, it impacts a lot. I mean, you would even see it today, right? You watch any of the sort of nighttime television,
Right.
Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert, they're 6 feet apart. There's no crowd. It's one person. Most of the stuff is being done on Zoom, and
Right.
yeah, it's. But necessity is the mother of invention, right? So, how often are we going to have to travel to do interviews now?
Right.
Or how often are we going to have to, I think we, like as a society, we're just kind of rethinking how we can streamline the things that we're doing and maybe save some money in other places to make sure that everybody stays safe, for sure. Yeah,
and definitely that's going on a lot, and I know a lot of people are doing that whole streamlining. And you're right. I remember that when Saturday Night Live was first coming out during the early part of the COVID pandemic and everything, they were definitely using, I wasn't sure whether it was Zoom or whether it was StreamYard, but they were definitely using a lot of these type of platforms because they were all at home doing their skits and then producing them in kind of this kind of group environment and all of that. So definitely I think that we're seeing that in a number of the entertainment industries where they're trying to come up with creative ways to get people's messages out there, because I do think that the art is very much about messaging and all of that. I did want to get one other one that you've got on that you had sent me, which was a one that is coming up on in February in less than a month, and that is called Burn It All. So I did want to get that on before we get ready to get out of here. And then one of the things that I always do, as Cara knows from having been on the show a couple of times, is I always give people a chance to give their words of encouragement, their words of positivity, and all of that. So I definitely want you to do that also, so you can be thinking about that. But in the meantime, I did want folks to catch a little bit of Burn It All as well. So I'm going to try to pull that one up by the YouTube clip that you sent me, because I think folks will definitely enjoy that one also.
Yeah. This one comes out February 19th, I believe. Yeah.
So it'll be out February 19th, you said?
Yep. Cool. Burn It All. That's right.
So we're going to see if we can't pull that one up in just a matter of a minute or so. You're trying to be there while I'm pulling it up and getting it all to go and everything. If you can share a little bit about that positivity thought. There we go. I just got it.
You got it?
Yep. But you can still give your positivity thought. And then
well, my words of encouragement is don't stop. No matter what anybody tells you, just keep going. Even if you're on your knees and crawling, just don't stop, because, you know, the mountain is high and the best view is always at the top. So don't stop.
Sounds great. Great advice. I like that. And there is Burn It All. And let's see.
Yeah. This will be great.
Cool.
I think you might have my mom over there. She might already be dead.
Your mom's probably already cremated by now anyway. Pick up the ashes.
My mom was cremated here today.
It's closed.
I just need 2 minutes.
You're not supposed to be back here anyway.
Okay, seriously, what's going on here?
So what is it that you think that you've stumbled onto here?
Stupid girl!
What are you doing here? We process organs and tissue here.
This is my mother. You want to find a phone and call the cops? Yeah, there's my mom back there.
Calling the cops? That won't work how you think.
You're in on it.
We have a good thing going. If there's any exposure, they'll leave and they'll take all of their money and everyone here loses. Including you.
You run a very lucrative business.
You have no idea what you're walking into.
There's always more men. You don't think a woman is capable of doing all this?
I've made mincemeat out of a whole bunch of guys we thought were good at their job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was deep.
I think I've seen it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was very amazing. I can't wait to see that one come out. And like you said, that'll be out in February as well, so folks can get a chance to see that. One of the things that I was watching that I was thinking about that I was going to ask you, Amanda, is how important do you think it is to go after just the big guns when you're going after financing? Because I do know that a lot of times folks will think that they need to go after only the big guns. And by that, I mean the corporations, the things of that nature. Whereas I'm a big believer in the fact that sometimes your best investors might be, as I was jokingly saying earlier, from the friends and family plan and all of that, and some of the other folks that might even be small businesses, because we know that in a lot of places, whether it's like a Cincinnati where Car is at, or here in Durham where I'm at, a lot of times it might be the small business owner that might be the one that can help you in creating something, maybe even giving you a location for your movie or things along those lines. So how important do you think it is to go after a wide variety of people when you're trying to go after different investors and being a producer and all that? How important is it to explore all the avenues?
I think it is the most important thing. As a producer, it takes a village, right? And for Burn It All, most of our locations were donated. Most of our it's the 1,000 phone call, right? It's the 1,000 phone call. And when I talked about building your team and building your advocates, those people are there, right? It's just a matter of asking. And it could be your neighbor, and it could be your neighbor's neighbor. It could be, $100, it could be $1,000, but you want to build that team so that you can do more and more projects, and those projects can get bigger and bigger. And of course, call the big companies, right? But look at who's around you.
Right.
Nevermore has been a huge supporter of the Stairs, and they've been incredible. And you guys have your village, and we just happen to get lucky. and it was one of those 1,000 phone calls. So don't be afraid of no.
Right.
Keep making phone calls and build your little village, because it takes everybody. It takes everybody.
And I'm sure Jim would be curious to know this, and he may have already told him. Jim is the one of the primary film person there at the Carolina Theater and everything. But how did y'all find Nevermore, and how important is the festival circuit to what y'all do and everything? Because I do know that there's different niche film festivals. There's definitely like an African American film festivals throughout the country, including a major one in Miami. Of course, there's the Big Sundance, which somebody had referred to earlier. It was actually Ramon that mentioned it earlier. And of course, there's Full Frame, which is our big documentary film festival here in Durham as well. But how did y'all learn about Nevermore, and how many festivals are y'all planning to attend with the Stairs?
Well, we learned about Nevermore actually through Dread Central. They put out their 100 best horror film festivals, and it was literally the 1,000 phone call plan, right? Hey, are you taking submissions? Hey, we've got this film. When is your event happening? You know, and it was, how do I submit? What do I do? And it was literally that. It was, and Jim has been absolutely amazing, and everybody at Nevermore has been so welcoming. So yeah, that's how we got in contact with Nevermore, and it's been incredible. It's been incredible. We, your second piece of the question was the film festival circuit.
Yes.
This is the first film that we've done the circuit on, and I think Nevermore is our third or fourth festival.
Okay.
And we've won 10 awards already.
Oh, wow.
And the first three, we pulled a hat trick on the first three. So the first three festivals that we were in, we won something. We won the European Cinematography Award. We've won the Queen Palm International Film Festival Best Film Award, and we got into Nevermore, and we've it's been incredible. The reception of this film has been absolutely overwhelming. Yeah.
And it's part of the reason that y'all have done the festivals this time as opposed to last time because of COVID, as y'all would have probably done a different kind of release strategy as opposed to the festivals if it had not been for COVID and the pandemic that we're in? Or do you think that you would have still been doing the same strategy regardless?
I think on this particular film, we would have done the festival circuit regardless. Horror, as a genre, is a much different community than, say, a female-driven action film like Burn It All, or a war film like Alone We Fight, right? The horror film community is important for us to be involved in making a horror film, and Drago is a huge horror film fanatic, and he wanted to be able to have this film available for those people that attend film festivals. I mean, he's the guy that was sneaking out of his bed at night to watch Elvira's Midnight Macabre.
Wow.
So it was really important. It was important for him to give back to the community, right? That gave him so much, and so we wanted to be able to participate and bring this film to the film festival community so that they could enjoy it, especially the horror community.
And the horror community is such a niche community. I know when I was talking to my friend Zach, who's into the funk music and everything, he's actually trying to figure out some ways to market his funk music and everything. But funk music is very niche. I would argue that horror movies are very niche as well. So how do you go about marketing to something that is a niche-oriented field? Because I'm sure that Zach will probably go back and watch this later on because he's a good friend of mine, and he'll probably be trying to figure out how to do more niche marketing. Because, like I said, horror is niche. Definitely funk music is niche. I'm into blues music. That's definitely niche. And there are a couple of other things that are niche oriented in a number of fields and everything. But when you're doing something that's more niche marketing, what's the best way in your mind to go after those niche markets?
Well, I mean, I have sort of a different strategy around it, because I don't think that this film just applies to horror. I don't think the horror genre owns this film, right? I think that there's underlying stories and themes in this particular project that can find a reception in the mainstream audience, because it's not gory and it's not paranormal, right? It's not a Paranormal Activity or a Blair Witch Project or a Saw type film. And it has sort of recognizable people, John Schneider, Kathleen Quinlan. I showed it to my folks who hate horror movies. But my dad's like, yeah, that's good. It's nice to see John on TV again, you know? So I think it kind of, yes, it's a horror movie, and we definitely want to play to the strength. But I think that there is an opportunity for it to have broad appeal, because I don't want to count people out that maybe think of horror movies as, you know, the Saw franchise or Paranormal Activity, right? Not all horror movies are like that, and so I'm all about bringing more people into the fold, right? Getting more people involved in the community, get more people involved into film, and so. My strategy is not a niche market strategy,
right?
But I leave that up to the professionals.
Gotcha.
Right?
But it seems like you have you have a theme that you like, such as blowing things up, and you know. But yeah, just those 3 movies alone, they're not similar, but they have similar elements that you can tie. And that makes these films like trademark of you. So that's pretty awesome. You know, it's good. It's good to be niche-y sometimes, and other times it's just good to have a trademark, you know? And that's important, like whatever your passion is. You don't have to be like, I'm a one-trick pony and all I do is like gore and blowing things up. There's nothing else. Like, you're like, we love blowing things up, and let's see what else we can weave into that.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What does the name Wandering Dragon mean and everything? Like I said, I've been looking at that name the whole time, and I was wondering how y'all came up with the name Wandering Dragon. I'm assuming it might be part of your business partner's last name, since it's got some similarities there and everything. But I was just wondering how Wandering Dragon came about. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there might be some people watching that are filmmakers as well as just good storytellers, as you said, and everything. So if they've got ideas, how would they reach you as the producer, or as one of the people that's one of the principals within Wandering Dragon? So those are the kind of like wrap-up questions. Is 1, how Wandering Dragon came about, and 2, how can they reach you?
Sure. So dragons love to collect shiny, precious objects and take them into their cave. And we like to travel around to find those shiny objects, right? So Wandering Dragon is just this homage to, you know, traveling around and finding that shiny object and kind of taking it up through the process. And people can get a hold of us. It's Wandering Dragon Productions, singular dragon, multiple productions, @gmail.com.
Okay. Sounds great. So hopefully folks will definitely keep that in mind and reach out to you and things of that nature. Do you ever do anything outside of, like, if somebody's listening that is interested in having you be a producer outside of the Wandering Dragon family, do you ever produce outside of the film family? So do you ever produce yourself, say in the TV world or in a restaurant or in a number of other things that folks may say, hey, that Amanda sounds like a really wonderful lady. I need to get her involved on my business side and everything. Or you pretty much, your plate is already full? Because I do know that sometimes people's plates get full.
My plate's never full. I'll tell you right up front. If my plate ever gets full, I'm one of those very honest people. Yeah, I do a lot of producing outside of the production company. I used to have a community center where I used to own a community center. So producing events, live events, music events, dance events, every kind of event. I did that for a few years. And so, yeah, if there's anything that needs to be produced, any sort of budget that needs to be looked over, any kind of outside experience, hey, you know, I'm thinking of doing this. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out. I'm more than happy to help. That's my job. Help other people go past where I'm going. Yeah.
It sounds like an amazing job, and it sounds like a great job that more people need to be having in the world. But I love your attitude about it, because definitely it seems like you're more open, and I know some other people that are more closed oriented in the ways that they treat their jobs and everything. But it does seem like you've got a very open attitude and things of that nature. And I definitely also love your attitude about art, both you and Cara, because I was having this conversation with a past guest and everything, and we were talking about the nature of art and all of that, because I do sometimes think that people think that art is overly like that they don't understand that art can be a lot of different things, and there are a lot of things that people may not even think of as art that are art. Because I know I had this gentleman Calvin Brett on, and he was showing some pieces of what some people might think of as trash, but it was found art, and it actually made a great art piece. And we were having a whole conversation about Andy Warhol, because everybody remembers that famous Campbell soup that it became that great historical piece of art. And some people would be like, I see that every time I go to the grocery store. How's that an art? But Andy made it an art piece, and it seems to me that a lot of the people that are in your team also have that attitude that art is in the eye of the beholder, as you earlier said, and everything.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you know, it's important to us. It's one of the pillars of why we created the business was, listen, we're going to kick the door open, and we're going to get as many people through the door as possible before that door shuts again. You know, and hey, finance is art. Budgeting is art. You're squeezing, you know, blood out of a turnip. That's art. So yeah.
No, financing is definitely art. It's an art form that I have yet to master. Actually, that's one of the things that I know. And then this will be like kind of my final wrap up thoughts. And I'd love to hear if y'all have any final ones. But definitely that's one of the things that I've run across, because even in my own life, I know that I am not the master of budgeting and things of that nature, my own. And even though I'm in my late 50s, my own younger brother, who's 7 years younger, as well as my parents, who are much older, will sometimes look at me and be like, you are still in some serious debt, and you are still having some other issues going on, and you're also not getting paid enough for some of the things that you're doing. Because I do think that sometimes we get into this habit of wanting to be very supportive of different people that we are involved with and things of that nature, and we sometimes get suckered into doing things for free. So I also sometimes have to understand my own worth and actually get paid for the different things that I do and all of that, because I do think that sometimes we can't let ourselves to come back to my friend Ray Pascal and everything, in one of his Pascalisms, we let ourselves get brain drained and let folks actually exploit us in ways that we don't need to be exploited. And I definitely see that in the artistic community, and I'm sure you've even seen that as a producer, where you've had to call out some of your filmmakers, some of your musicians that are involved in the films, as well as some of the other people. Even when you had the community center, you probably had to tell your dancers that if you're going to do a show, I'm going to pay you and everything. I'm not going to be doing it and not giving you at least some sort of reward of some sort or another. But I do think that too often we don't give our artists the due respects that they deserve. But that's kind of my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours, and if you got any other final thoughts.
No, I just, you know, takes a village, right? We're not just an island, and you might have a goal, but you want to get to that goal, then you stay singularly focused on that goal, and you get your people around you, and you don't stop. You know, don't stop. And there's people that will help you. All you have to do is reach out.
Definitely. Cara, you got any final thoughts? I was glad that you were able to pop in and join the conversation after I invited you, along with the Gwen and a number of other folks as well. So you got any final thoughts that you want to share before I get ready to bounce on over to Mullins? And then I got to do another one as well. By the way, Amanda, I must be like slightly crazy on Mondays, because I do 3 podcasts on Mondays. I do 2 of these streaming ones, and then I turn around and do an audio one from 7 to 9. So that Monday is kind of like my crazy day. And I do all of this while also sometimes trying to go to one of my day jobs, which I left early today so that I could come and prepare for this. So definitely.
Well, I stayed on I stayed on because I was like, I just want to hear you talk. I don't know what input I can have, but I'm just going to listen. So thank you. But you know, I agree with you, Amanda. Like, just, you know, really stand firm on your passions, and like, don't give up. If you're passionate about it, don't give up. That is a piece of you. That is your identity. Don't give it up. But don't be so tunnel vision that you get lost in it. You have to be creative too. And it sounds like the 3 of us, we know how to get creative and, you know, like you said, get blood out of the turnip. And so that is super important too. Sometimes you just have to MacGyver through life, you know, to get to what you need to get to. And that is, you just have to just stay strong and know that it's going to be a weird ride, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah,
definitely. And the last thing I'm going to say before we get ready to hit the theme and everything is definitely go to the Carolina Theater website. And there you can get the tickets because Jim has already told me that we've gone live. So definitely they can get tickets by going to the Carolina Theater website, and hopefully they can get tickets. And actually, you can even watch some as well, Cara, because even though it's in North Carolina, as I remember, I think Ohio is in our geolocation because they're doing that geo-marketing location kind of thing, so you can actually watch the shows as well. So there are a number of great movies and everything, so definitely go check out the Carolina Theater website and Carolina Theater at Durham, and if you type up or do a Google search for Carolina Theater at Durham, you will see that the website is there, and of course the great movies, including The Stairs, are there, and I'm looking forward to seeing the entire movie, and I'm also going to try to find out a way to see those other two movies as well. Maybe Amanda will be kind and send me a version, a full version or something like that, but
I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
All right, sounds great, but I do appreciate you being on, Amanda. You were an amazing guest.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.